Hello, welcome back to Theater Journal Shorts. I'm here today with Dr. Irvin Manuel Gonzalez to discuss their article, See Embrando, Life and Sewing Care, Refusing Gentrification on West Jefferson Boulevard, which is out in the December 2024 issue of Theater Journal, Volume 76, Number 4.
Hello, Irvin. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really excited to have this chance to talk to you about your forthcoming Theater Journal article.
Yeah, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm really excited to be here in virtual space with you.
So, to start off, I was wondering, could you give our viewers a brief summary of the topic of your article and your main argument?
Of course. So the title of the article is Siembrando Life and Sowing Care, Refusing Gentrification on West Jefferson Boulevard. And the article essentially examines siembra, which is a performance cultivated back in November of 2021 with a whole cohort of Latina artists in Los Angeles. We had Isis Avalos, Primera Generación Dance Collective, which I co-direct with Alfonso Cervera, Patricia Patihuerta, and Rosa Rodriguez Frazier, and also Denis Guzman and Raquel Cabrera. So we all worked together to build this event. And essentially, the article sort of centralizes this argument that performances like Siembra embody care and resistance, disrupting gentrification through practices rooted in Latina culture and knowledge. And that by transforming these sort of spaces through things like gossip, partying, celebration, altar making, um, projects like Siembra can queer sort of the logic of neoliberal cities that um, commodify and also exclude certain bodies by foregrounding belonging, resilience, and care in those celebrations. So I was really excited to sort of highlight how Siembra brought together these artists in collaboration, particularly with West Jefferson Boulevard residents, to build this space of celebration that not only highlighted resiliency, but highlighted just everyday celebrations that take place within the neighborhood that showcase that the community and a body politic is still alive despite gentrification coming into the neighborhood. Oftentimes, I think narratives of gentrification are sort of bent on saying that things are dead or things are so old that they need to be replaced or that certain things don't fit within the landscape anymore. And within this particular sort of sector of Los Angeles, which is connected to District 10. A lot of those residents, right, are seeing these effects and changes in their city and in their neighborhoods. So I wanted to highlight the fact that residents are still there, still alive, still partying, still grooving, and to showcase the beauty of their landscapes, right? To also counter those narratives that essentially their landscapes need to be sort of refurbished or changed, or that their bodies need to be sort of banished from those spaces by highlighting just the beauty and care that they already enacting within where they live.
I love too the connecting of care to celebration as opposed to, or, we often, I think, when we talk about care, are thinking about it in ways that maybe, have challenge or burden attached to it or sort of resistance. And I think that resilience and celebration are such a wonderful perspective to bring to the topic of this special issue. You gestured to this a little bit in that you're involved with the performance and the collective that produced it or were involved in co-creating. But I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about how you came to that topic, maybe as a participant or as a scholar, both participating and writing about it.
Completely, yeah. So as an artist scholar, I'm always really driven by a lot of the work that I do, and sort of seeing how that's in relationship to my own scholarship interests regarding sort of queer of color critique and also performance studies and dance studies. So I'm a big sort of dance nerd. I like to see where dance is taking place, particularly as it's related to working class Latina culture. And as someone who grew up in those spaces, right? I grew up with parents who migrated from Mexico, and oftentimes we would use sort of parties to gather with family. And since I was very young, I always knew that there was something powerful about us coming together to sweat. I just never knew, how to put words to it, right? I could feel it in my body. So I think that's why I always gravitated to dance and art. And eventually, right, forming this collective Primera Generación dance, we came together and established ourselves in Los Angeles and then took over a nonprofit called Showbox LA. With that nonprofit, it was already sort of existing within this particular neighborhood in West Jefferson Boulevard because it had a physical space. But when we took it over, we wanted to sort of be really careful about how we establish programming within the neighborhood. And so inspiration for those events came about us sort of doing reflexive ethnographic research, right? Considering our own positionalities within the space, and coming into contact with local residents to sort of see what they actually wanted to see within their neighborhood, right? Oftentimes we sort of have these moments where artists might go into a space and make art, right? But that art doesn't necessarily resonate with the folks on the block, or it brings in outside folks to that specific area, right? That are not necessarily part of the area, which also participates in gentrification to an extent, right? So I wanted to make sure that we were building um, artistic opportunities for the residents of the block while also highlighting the art that already existed there. And one of those spaces happened to be Gira Estética Salon. And we had many sort of encounters with the owner of the salon, Aide Marin, and she was absolutely sort of enthralled with the possibilities of collaborating, connecting, and making events happen. Because she herself saw her work as an artist, that it became sort of this collaboration between artists. And the work came about by us sort of building that event and then me wanting to sort of see what exactly was taking place within that event, aside from us getting to groove and sweat, what exactly is happening within us cultivating this sweat, right? And part of that was sort of really highlighting presence in the present, right? Oftentimes we sort of think about queerness and queerings as things for the future, but I was also sort of interested in how it's happening daily and in the now, and how that's particularly pushing back against gentrification. So us sweating, dancing to cumbias, and then those beats spilling out into the night, right? The door was open. You could sort of see like the windows getting, condensation from the sweat. And so these are sort of signs and markers of just like bodies moving together in space and performing in ways that show that they're still alive, they're still here. And that's where the inspiration came for this article, right? Really highlighting just how the people on this block are already, engaging tactics for their everydays and their nows in ways that they sow, seeds for better tomorrows.
That's beautiful. And I think it already really starts to answer my next question, which is more about how this particular article connects to your broader research concerns, which are seemingly very, very interconnected with your artistic work. But I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about your broader research, or maybe how you see yourself in dialogue with conversations that are ongoing in theater and performance studies and dance studies as well.
Of course, yeah. So I've always been a really enamored with Diana Taylor's concept of the repertoire, right? And sort of seeing how we're carrying these archives of memory and movement in our body continuously, and then passing that down in different ways. And I wanted to sort of really nuance a point on that and sort of see how we are also passing aspects of care between our bodies, and how that's being handed down generationally, right? Because this event, Siembra, brought together particularly a lot of migrant Latina women. In their 40s and their 50s, right? It became sort of this intergenerational experience with our collective, who, we saw them as our moms and as our tias, but also as these like powerful business owners, right? Who were engaging just their own sort of dynamics within the block, right? And seeing how they are passing down specific sort of pieces of information, specific movements, and specific pieces of advice. And that's also where my sort of interest in highlighting something like gossip felt important too, right? As sort of this ontology and also an epistemology in its own way, right? This form of knowledge and way of being that carries important and highly sensitive information, right? And gets passed down between bodies and circulated. And so I wanted to sort of see how both in that space of gossip, but also within our dancing that night, we were carrying these repertoires of care, right? Oftentimes, I think Latina and Latin American social dance forms are relegated as just like entertainment pieces. And so I was really curious to sort of highlight them as these sort of very important repertoires that are passed down generationally and that we've been using it for resilience and celebration throughout time, and sort of seeing what it means to enact them in different contexts, right? That dancing in the club is going to have a little bit of a different type of sweat than dancing, in a city that's being gentrified, right? We're pushing back against different factors. And so that's where I was really, enamored with highlighting care within that repertoire that Diana Taylor talks about. And then also really, connecting back to queer of color performance as sort of this framework for analyzing siembra, inspired by Joshua Chambers Letson, right? And his book After the Party, considering the ways in which we are performing in the everyday, but also performing in nightclubs and also performing at parties, and that these performances are forms of protest, forms of resiliency that can be unpacked to sort of see how um, minoritized bodies and minoritarian identities are working to build spaces for themselves and build futures for themselves. So I wanted to sort of see how dance participates within that, and how something like planning and curating art events can also participate within that, right? How we are working together to be mindful about what it means to work with marginalized communities and what it means to party with them as well.
Yeah, I think that's all really important and, so many interesting tie-ins to things that are being discussed more broadly in the fields right now. Um, in terms, though, of undergraduate students who might be watching this for a class assignment, who maybe are less grounded in disciplinary conversations, what would you say are some of the key takeaways that you'd like a less initiated audience to take to gain from reading your article, or maybe how you see the work you're doing in relation to broader trends in contemporary theater, performance, and dance in the United States?
Yeah, I think as we continuously sort of enter new ways of looking at dance, theater, and performance studies, one of the sort of big factors that we've been examining recently, right, is how we cultivate care in multiple different ways, right? Care in our research approaches, care in the ways in which we write about certain subjects, care in the ways that we bring these pieces of information to the academy, right? And how we work with them inside of the academy. So a lot of that was really sort of highlighting how within these different sort of disciplines we're engaging the ideas of like embodied care as activism, right? Or art as catalyst for social change. And that's something that's really big within my research interests is sort of seeing how we can engage our research for social change, and how we can sort of highlight these spaces of movement and performance to either bring in new knowledges into the academy or highlight knowledges that have always existed within spaces outside of the academy. It's also sort of participating in reflecting on contemporary sort of U.S. performance, right? Seeing that performance is consistently all around us. And for me, it was always about going back to my own lived experience and seeing how that is also adding new perspectives to just different canons within dance and performance studies, right? What is it that, growing up as a queer Latina working class body, what did it mean for me to dance, right? And then sort of really highlighting the importance of that. And that's something that I encourage all students to do, right? To sort of reflect on their backgrounds and consider what pieces of knowledges and information and are important to bring forth in their experience as students in their research and sort of their academic endeavors, right? I was also sort of seeing just the ways in which we are also reflecting on critiquing neoliberalism, right? I think that's also something big within performance studies right now is really highlighting how something like performance participates within it or also resists it, right? In ways that bring attention to um, just how we can change economic landscapes and how these economic landscapes are also sort of volatile and how they affect bodies in different ways. And so a lot of the work I think within this article and in what I do is really highlighting just the potential for us to analyze performance and sort of see it as a way to build social change with the folks that we are working with. So that it's no longer necessarily about going into community, taking knowledge, and then bringing it to the academy, but actually seeing how the whole entire research process and research outcomes can work with the community to make change happen for them. Yeah.
Yes, I completely agree that moving away from an extractive mode of making art and doing research and scholarship, or for students learning and studying, is, a much more aligned with an ethic of care and hopefully a direction that, across fields or wherever you are watching this in terms of your own education, something you'll be able to take away. So for our viewers, I strongly encourage you to take a moment to check out the longer article by Dr. Irvin Manuel Gonzalez in the upcoming December 2024 issue of Theater Journal. That's volume 76, issue 4. The title of the article is Sembrando: Life and Sowing Care, Refusing Gentrification on West Jefferson Boulevard. So thank you again so much for joining me today, Irvin, and have a great day.
Thank you so, so much.